All right. Good evening, everyone. This is Jose Vega coming at you once again with the weekly Edgar Poe class series. Today, Dennis Speed, who usually joins us, will not be joining us again this week, but hopefully he will be joining us fully recovered next week. As always, before we actually begin our Poe classes, I give a just a little bit of a brief introduction as to where we are in the campaign, where we are in the world, and sort of a briefing. Um, Normally, by the way, if this is your first time here, hi, I'm a congressional candidate running in the Bronx against Richie Torres. My name is Jose Vega. You may be new here, given that there has been a big upsurge in my running. I understand it to be the case that Mr. Torres is deeply unpopular these days, and as a result, people have been looking for a candidate that has been running against me. But in order to understand what I do and who I am and why we have an independent campaign, the first thing I want to talk about is something that I talk about every Friday, which is the International Peace Coalition. For those of you who are recurring, usually I start by talking about what happened on the International Peace Coalition call. Today, there was not an International Peace Coalition call. If you're new here, you have no idea what I'm saying when I say International Peace Coalition. The International Peace Coalition was something that was formed, I believe, 2 years ago now by Helga Zeppel-Roush and a few other people with this idea that we need to unite the peace movement around the world. And I forgot how many meetings we've done. I know, we're over 100 at this point, and it's, we just have a different kinds of people come on every week, all uniting and talking about how do we actually get to peace. One of the people that has been a recurring member of the International Peace Coalition is Ray McGovern, and I'm actually about to pull up just some slides of Ray McGovern right now because I have here, let me just pull this up here, some pictures of Ray McGovern, who happens to be in Germany right now. Now, why is he in Germany? Well, because tomorrow we are having the beginning of an international conference. Now, by the way, as of tomorrow, it'll be 110 meetings. As I say, as of tomorrow, because tomorrow is our international conference. The Schiller Institute is hosting an international conference in Berlin, Germany, tomorrow and Sunday. It's a 2-day conference, and it's a continuation of a conference you hopefully may have tuned into that we did last month in Newark, New Jersey. You may have either tuned into it or you may have been there in person. I may have seen you there. And we had a large gathering of people at this conference. We had all of our favorite people there. Ray McGovern, of course, was there, as well as Scott Ritter. I believe Garland Nixon was there in attendance as well. And we had some international faces as well. Former president of Guyana, Donald Ramotar, was there, and we had a whole bunch of international press and international representation, like Ambassador Chumakov of Russia. Tomorrow is just a continuation of it. Now, for you Americans who are tuned in and watching right now, it starts at 4 a.m. New York time. So I know that some of you may not be so eager to get up on a Saturday morning to watch it, but hey, if you are, you're more than welcome to go on the Schiller Institute live stream YouTube channel. It'll be transcribed, or excuse me, it'll be live interpreted in English for you to watch. But we will also be showcasing the first panel of tomorrow's conference at 2 p.m. Eastern time, New York time, on the Saturday Town Hall on the LaRouche Organization YouTube channel. And I would urge you to definitely tune into that. Now, why did I start out with that briefing by telling you, if you want to understand what I am, who I am, and why we have this campaign, and then I went into that briefing, is because we are not just limited to the Bronx. Yes, of course, I'm running for Congress in the Bronx. This is the 15th congressional district, and yes, I am running against Richie Torres. None of that changes. All of that is true. But the thing that makes us different, what makes this campaign different, what makes our campaign different is that we have an international orientation. We do not exist in a bubble. Okay. I am not running simply to make the buses free and faster and fair, though they should be, or to even just add more train lines, which there should be more train lines. But rather that those things should exist under a top down reorganization process on how we actually approach dialogue with other nations and what our relationship to other nations actually looks like. I am a patriot as much as I am a world citizen. And when I say world citizen, what I mean by that is that, our struggle here for, development, for the right to creative development, for the right to develop infrastructure, the right to develop sovereignty of the mind and of the body and of our country, very much is also tied to that same fight that other people are having around the world as well. Not just people who are just what our quote unquote neighbors. Our neighbors are everyone around the world. That's why, of course, we care very deeply about what's happening in Palestine. In fact, in my last campaign, I said that the Bronx is Gaza West. Now, I just saw that we got a donation for $100 that came in from Emma Daniel out in California. I want to thank you for your donation. I cannot read your comment out loud because of what it says against my opponent over the air, but I appreciate you watching the stream and I appreciate you donating right now as we're live. And anyway, I hope that sort of orients you just a little bit as to who I am and what I do. And if people have questions about that, you can leave those in the chat. I may get to them if we have time at the end of the stream or maybe at a subsequent future stream. Some of you might remember a stream I did with Dennis Speed where we were responding to comments that came out of the Brianna Joy Gray interview I did. It may be warranted to do another one again, just because I have been seeing a lot of questions come up, especially around my association with LaRouche, which I'm very happy to talk about and happy to do. But the reason that we are here today, of course, is we do a weekly class series on Edgar Poe, and this usually just revolves around us reading a story by Edgar Poe. Now, one thing I just want to kind of put in here is that we intend to create institutions in this district by means of having this campaign. A candidate should already be doing before they are elected what they are saying they intend to do. So we are celebrating the 250th birthday of the Declaration of Independence and the American Revolution. The way I intend to do that is to start a revolution in the practice of citizenship. And that is what my campaign is going to do. That's also why we're here reading Poe. Poe spent his last years here in the Bronx. I believe he wrote one of his magnum opuses, Eureka, which is an amazing story or tale by Poe, and I would encourage others to read it as well. And that's quite a long-term project. But Poe was very much an American patriot, and I know a lot of you may not think of him that way, but he was. And I would ask you to revisit some of the classes that we had done earlier in the year since we started the process, I think almost a year ago, since we started doing these, so that you can get a better explanation why, and you can find some of the classes with Dennis Speed where he goes more in depth to it, especially talking about just the early 1800s and there's relationship to people like James Fenimore Cooper and others who had a mission to uphold the good traditions of the Constitution and exactly that practice of citizenry. And so what you're tuning into now is a continuation of exactly that, that process of citizenry, that process of upholding and continuing the American Revolution. So again, just if you're new here, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I usually live stream these to my X and my YouTube channel accounts, and then we usually do have a live audience. You will be hearing their voices. I have other people who come and read with us, and so I hope that you will stick around for this as well. Today's story is Metzengerstein. And I'm going to put this up on the screen for you to follow along as well. So here we go. And great. Perfect. All right. Now, I have readers here in the room with me, and we will just get started. So this is Metzengerstein, A Tale in Imitation of the German by Edgar A. Poe. Now, you're going to encounter some references and some uh, you're going to encounter some references, some stuff, for example, that's going to be in different languages. There's just a couple of phrases here that are in French. I have the translations handy and on standby. Um, and also, we have some notes that we may go through at the end as well. One thing is, I do like to try to keep these and end them just before 7 o'clock, because then our friend Diane Sayre hosts her symposium. So that's just something for you to keep in mind, especially if you're wondering about the LaRouche question. Definitely check out Diane Sayre's symposium that she does on the LaRouche organization that starts at 7. But anyway, it's best that we begin. And so, Metzengerstein, A Tale in Imitation of the German by Edgar A. Poe. And it begins here with a Latin quote, Pestis eram vivus, moriens tua mors ero. And the translation of that is, living, I am your plague. Dying, I will be your death. And yeah, so let's begin. And you'll, at some point, I'll signal to the people in the audience to come and switch out with me. Horror and fatality have been stalking abroad in all ages. Why then give a date to the story I have to tell? I will not. Besides, I have other reasons for concealment. Let it suffice to say that at the period of which I speak, there existed in the interior of Hungary a settled, although hidden, belief in the doctrines of the metempsychosis. Now, let me stop here. Metempsychosis refers to the belief that upon death, the souls of humans enter into the bodies of animals or other humans, and vice versa, which would explain the animal nature of various oligarchs. So, anyway, of the doctrines themselves, that is, of their falsity or of their probability, I say nothing. I assert, however, that much of our incredulity, excuse me. I assert, however, that much of their incredulity, as La Bruyere says of all of our unhappiness, vient de ne pouvoir être sûr. And I believe I have that here, comes from the inability to be alone. So I'll read that sentence again. I assert, however, that much of our incredulity, as La Bruyere says of all of our happiness, comes from the inability to be alone. But there were some points in the Hungarian superstition which were fast verging to absurdity. They, the Hungarians, differed essentially from their Eastern authorities. For example, the soul, said the former. I give words of an acute and intelligent Parisian. And that is a long French sentence that I can't read, so I will just read it in English. Reside only once in a material body. As for the rest, what is thought to be a horse, dog, or man is only the intangible essence of these animals. The families of Berlitzing and Metzengerstein had been at variance for centuries. Never before were two houses so illustrious mutually embittered by hostility so deadly. Indeed, at the era of this history, it was observed by an old crone of haggard and sinister appearance that fire and water might sooner mingle than a Berlifitzing clasp the hand of a Metzengerstein. The origin of this enmity seems to be found in the words of an ancient prophecy. A lofty name shall have a fearful fall when, like the rider over his horse, the mortality of Metzengerstein shall triumph over the immortality of Berlifitzstein. To be sure, the words themselves had little or no meaning, but more trivial causes had given rise, and that no long while ago, to consequences equally eventful. Besides, the estates which were contiguous, besides the estates which were contiguous, had long exercised a rival influence in the affairs of a busy government. Moreover, near neighbors are seldom friends, and the inhabitants of the castle Berlifitzstein might look from their lofty buttresses into the very windows of the Chateau Metzengerstein. Least of all was the more than feudal magnificence thus discovered calculated to allay the irritable feelings of the less ancient and less wealthy Berlifitzsteins. What wonder, then, that the words, however silly, of that prediction should have succeeded in setting and keeping at variance two families already predisposed to quarrel by every instigation of hereditary jealousy. The prophecy seemed to imply, if it implied anything, a final triumph on the part of the already more powerful house, and was of course remembered with the more bitter animosity on the side of the weaker and less influential. Dick, you want to take over? Yeah. You can just sit right here.
Okay. Wilhelm, Count Berlifitzing, although honorably and loftily descended, was, at the epoch of this narrative, an infirm and doting old man, remarkable for nothing but an inordinate and inveterate personal antipathy to the family of his rival, and so passionate a love of horses and of hunting that neither bodily decrepitude, great age, nor mental incapacity prevented his daily participation in the dangers of the chase. Chasse. Um, Frederick Baron Metzengerstein was, on the other hand, had not yet of age. His father, the minister G, died young. His mother, the Lady Mary, followed quickly after. Frederick was at that time in his 15th year. In a city, 15 years are no long period. A child may still be a child in his third lustrum. But in a wilderness, in so magnificent a wilderness as that old principality, 15 years have a far deeper meaning. The beautiful Lady Mary, how could she die, and of consumption? But it is a path I have prayed to follow. I would wish all I love to perish of that gentle disease. How glorious to depart in the heyday of the young blood, the heart all passion, the imagination all fire, amid the remembrance of happier days, in the fall of the year, and so be buried up forever in the gorgeous autumnal leaves. Thus died the Lady Mary. The young Baron Frederick stood, without a living relative, by the coffin of his dead mother. He laid his hand upon her placid forehead. No shudder came over his delicate frame, no sigh from his gentle bosom, no curl upon his kingly lip. Heartless, self-willed, and impetuous from his childhood, he had derived, at the age of which I speak, through a career of unfeeling, wanton, and reckless dissipation, and a barrier had long since arisen in the channel of all holy thoughts and gentle recollections. From some peculiar circumstances attending the administration of his father, the young baron, at the decease of the former, entered immediately upon his vast possessions. Such estates were never before held by a nobleman of Hungary. His castles were without number. Of these, the chief, in point of splendor and extent, was the Chateau Metzengerstein. The boundary line of his dominions was never clearly defined, but his principal park embraced a circuit of 150 miles. Upon the succession of a proprietor so young, with a character so well known, to a fortune so unparalleled, little speculation was afloat in regard to his probable course of conduct. And indeed, for the space of 3 days, the behavior of the heir out Heroded Herod, and fairly surpassed the expectations of his most enthusiastic admirers. Shameful debaucheries, flagrant treacheries, unheard of atrocities gave his trembling vassals quickly to understand that no servile submission on their part, no punctilios of conscience on his own, were thenceforward to prove any protection against the bloodthirsty and remorseless fangs of a petty Caligula. On the night of the 14th of the fourth day, the stables of Castle Berlitzfitzing were discovered to be on fire, and the neighborhood unanimously added the crime of the incendiary to the already frightful list of the baron's misdemeanors and enormities. But during the tumult occasioned by this occurrence, the young nobleman himself sat apparently buried in meditation in a vast and desolate upper apartment of the family palace of Metzengerstein. The rich, although faded tapestry hangings which swung gloomily upon the walls represented the majestic and shadowy forms of 1,000 illustrious ancestors. Here, rich ermined priests and pontifical dignitaries, familiarly seated with the autocrat and the sovereign, put a veto on the wishes of a temporal king, or restrained with the fiat of papal supremacy the rebellious scepter of the archenemy. Here the dark, tall statues of the princes Metzengerstein, their muscular war coursers, plunging over the carcass of a fallen foe, startled the firmest nerves with their vigorous expression. And here the voluptuous and swan-like figures of the dames of days gone by floated away in the mazes of an unreal dance to the strains of imaginary melody.
But as the Baron listened, or affected to listen, to the rapidly increasing uproar in the stables of the castle Berlitzing, or perhaps pondered, like Nero, upon some more decided audacity, his eyes were unwittingly riveted to the figure of an enormous and unnaturally colored horse, represented in the tapestry as belonging to a Saracen ancestor of the family of his rival. The horse, itself in the foreground of the design, stood motionless and statue like, while, Farther back, its discomfited rider perished by the dagger of a Metzengerstein. There was a fiendish expression on the lip of the young Frederick as he became aware of the direction which his glance had thus, without his consciousness, assumed. But he did not remove it. On the contrary, the longer he gazed, the more impossible did it appear that he might ever withdraw his vision from the fascination of that tapestry. It was with difficulty that he could reconcile his dreamy and incoherent feelings with the certainty of being awake. He could by no means account for the singular, intense, and overwhelming anxiety which appeared falling like a shroud upon his senses. But the tumult without, becoming suddenly more violent, with a kind of compulsory and desperate exertion, he diverted his attention to the glare of ruddy light thrown full by the flaming stables upon the windows of the apartment. The action was but momentary. His gaze returned mechanically to the wall. To his extreme horror and surprise, the head of the gigantic steed had, in the meantime, altered its position. The neck of the animal, before arched, as if in compassion over the prostrate body of its lord, was now extended at full length in the direction of the baron. The eyes, before invisible, now wore an energetic and human expression, while they gleamed with a fiery and unusual red, and the distended lips of the apparently enraged horse left in full view his sepulchral and disgusting teeth. Stupefied with terror, the young nobleman tottered to the door. As he threw it open, a flash of red light, streaming far into the chamber, flung his shadow with a clear, decided outline against the quivering tapestry, and he shuddered to perceive that shadow as he staggered for a moment upon the threshold, assuming the exact position and precisely filling up the contour of the relentless and triumphant murderer of the Saracen Berliftesing. With the view of lightning, the oppression of his spirits, the baron hurried into the open air. At the principal gate of the chateau, he encountered 3 equerries. With much difficulty and at the imminent peril of their lives, they were restraining the unnatural and convulsive plunges of the gigantic and fiery colored horse. "Whose horse is that? Where did you get him?" demanded the youth, in a querulous and husky tone of voice, as he became instantly aware that the mysterious steed in the tapestried chamber was the very counterpart of the furious animal before his eyes. "He is your own property, sire," replied one of the equerries. "At least, he is claimed by no other owner. We caught him just now, flying, all smoking and foaming with rage, from the burning stables of the castle Berliftesing. Supposing him to have belonged to the old count's stud of foreign horses, we led him back as an estray, but the grooms there disclaim any title to the creature, which is singular, since he bears evident marks of a narrow escape from the flames. The letters W, V, B are moreover branded very distinctly upon his forehead," interrupted a second equerry. "We at first supposed them to be the initials of Wilhelm von Berliftesing." "Extremely singular," said the young baron with a musing air, apparently unconscious of the meaning of his words. "He is, as you say, a remarkable horse, a prodigious horse, although, as you very justly observe, of a suspicious and untractable character. Let him be mine, however," he added, after a pause. "Perhaps a rider, like Frederick of Metzengerstein, may tame even the devil from the stables of Berliftesing." "You appear to be mistaken, my lord. The horse, as I think we mentioned, is not from the stables of the count, If such were the case, we know our duty better than to bring him in the presence of a noble of your name." "True," observed the baron dryly, and at that instant a page of the bedchamber came from the chateau with a heightened color and a precipitate step. He whispered into his master's ear an account of the miraculous and sudden disappearance of a small portion of the tapestry in an apartment which he designated, entering at the same time into particulars of a minute and circumstantial character, but from the low tone of voice in which these latter were communicated, nothing escaped to gratify the excited curiosity of the equerries. The young Frederick, however, during the conference, seemed agitated by a variety of emotions. He soon, however, recovered his composure, and an expression of determined malignancy settled upon his countenance as he gave peremptory orders that a certain chamber should be immediately locked up and the key placed forthwith in his own possession.
Okay. Hey, Dick. Yeah. I'll be the narrator. You be the baron, and Suzanne, you can be the vassal. You want to bring your chair just a little closer? So I think this starts with I'm the narrator, you're the baron, and you'll be the vassal. Suzanne, so you go. Have you heard of the
unhappy death of the hunter Bierliftising?
Said one of his vassals to the baron, as after the affair of the page, the huge and mysterious steed which that nobleman had adopted as his own plunged and curveted with redoubled and supernatural fury down the long avenue which extended from the chateau to the stables of Metzengerstein.
No.
Said the baron, turning abruptly towards the speaker.
Dead, say you?
It is true, my lord, and is so no unwelcome intelligence, I imagine, to a noble of your family.
Excuse me. A rapid smile of a peculiar and unintelligible meaning shot over the beautiful countenance of the listener.
How died he?
In his great exertions to rescue a favorite portion of his hunting stud, he has himself perished miserably in the flames.
Indeed,
Ejaculated the baron, as if slowly and deliberately impressed with the truth of some exciting idea.
Indeed.
Repeated the vassal.
Shocking.
Said the youth calmly, and turned quietly into the chateau. From this date, a marked alteration took place in the outward demeanor of the dissolute young Baron Frederick von Metzgerstein. Indeed, his behavior disappointed every expectation and proved little in accordance with the views of many a maneuvering mama, while his habits and manners, still less than formerly, offered anything congenial with those of the neighboring aristocracy. He has never to be seen beyond the limits of his own domain, and, in this wide and social world, was utterly companionless, unless, indeed, that unnatural, impetuous, and fiery-colored horse, which he henceforward continually bestrode, had any mysterious right to the title of his friend. Numerous invitations on the part of the neighborhood for a long time, however, periodically came in. Will the baron honor our festivals with his presence? Will the baron join us in a hunting of the boar? Metzengerstein does not hunt. Metzengerstein will not attend, were the haughty and laconic answers. These repeated insults were not to be endured by an imperious nobility. Such invitations became less cordial, less frequent. In time, they ceased altogether. The widow of the unfortunate Count Berlifitzstein was even heard to express a hope that the baron might be at home when he did not wish to be at home, since he disdained the company of his equals, and ride when he did not wish to ride, since he preferred the society of a horse. This, to be sure, was a very silly explosion of hereditary pique, and merely proved how singularly unmeaning our sayings are apt to become when we desire to be unusually energetic. The charitable nevertheless attributed the alteration in the conduct of the young nobleman to the natural sorrow of a son for the untimely loss of his parents, forgetting, however, his atrocious and reckless behavior during the short period immediately succeeding that bereavement. Some there were, indeed, who suggested a too haughty idea of self consequence and dignity. Others, again, among whom may be mentioned the family physician, did not hesitate in speaking of morbid melancholy and hereditary ill health, while dark hints of a more equivocal nature were current among the multitude. Indeed, the Baron's perverse attachment to his lately acquired charger, an attachment which seemed to attain new strength from every fresh example of the animal's ferocious and demon like propensities, at length became, in the eyes of all reasonable men, a hideous and unnatural fervor. In the glare of noon, at the dead hour of night, in sickness or in health, in calm or in tempest, in moonlight or in shadow, the young Metzengerstein seemed riveted to the saddle of that colossal horse, whose intractable audacity so well accorded with the spirit of his own. There were circumstances, moreover, which, coupled with late events, gave an unearthly and portentous character to the mania of the rider and to the capabilities of the steed. The space passed over in a single leap had been accurately measured, and was found to exceed by an astounding difference the wildest expectations of the most imaginative. The Baron, besides, had no particular name for the animal, although all the rest in his extensive collection were distinguished by characteristic appellations. His stable, too, was appointed at a distance from the rest, and with regard to grooming and other necessary offices, none but the owner in person had ventured to officiate, or even to enter the enclosure of that particular stall. It was also to be observed that although the three groups who had caught the horse as he fled from the conflagration of Berlifitzing uh, had succeeded in arresting his course by means of a chain bridle and noose. Yet no one of the three could with any certainty affirm that he had during that dangerous struggle, or at any period thereafter, actually placed his hand upon the body of the beast. Instances of peculiar intelligence in the demeanor of a noble and high spirited steed are not to be supposed capable of exciting unreasonable attention, especially among men who, daily trained to the labors of the chase, might appear well acquainted with the sagacity of a horse. But there were certain circumstances which intruded themselves perforce upon the most skeptical and phlegmatic, and it is said there were times when the singular and mysterious animal caused the gaping crowd who stood around to recoil in silent horror from the deep and impressive meaning of his terrible stamp, times when the young Metzengerstein turned pale and shrunk away from the rapid and searching expression of his intense and human looking eye. Among all the retinue of the Baron, however, none were found to doubt the ardor of that extraordinary affection which existed on the part of the young nobleman for the fiery qualities of his horse. At least none but an insignificant and mishapen little page, whose deformities were in everybody's way, and whose opinions were of the least possible importance. He, if his ideas are worth mentioning at all, had the effrontery to assert that his master never vaulted into the saddle without an unaccountable and almost imperceptible shudder, and that upon his return from every long continued and habitual ride, an expression of triumphant malignity distorted every muscle in his countenance. One tempestuous night, Metjergenstein, awaking from a heavy and oppressive slumber, descended like a maniac from his chamber, and mounting in great haste, bounded away into the mazes of the forest. An occurrence so common attracted no particular attention, but his return was looked for with intense anxiety on the part of his domestics, when, after some hours' absence, the stupendous and magnificent battlements of the Chateau Metzgergenstein were discovered crackling and rocking to their very foundation, under the influence of a dense and livid mass of ungovernable fire. As the flames, when first had already made so terrible a progress that all efforts to save any portion of the building were evidently futile, the astonished neighborhood stood idly around in silent and apathetic wonder. But a new and fearful object soon riveted the attention of the multitude and proved how much more intense is the excitement wrought in the feelings of a crowd by the contemplation of human agony than that brought about by the most appalling spectacles of inanimate matter. Up the long avenue of aged oaks which led from the forest to the main entrance of the Chateau Metzgergenstein, a steed bearing an unbonneted and disordered rider was seen leaping from an impetuosity which outstripped the very demon of the tempest and extorted from every stupefied beholder the ejaculation, "Horrible!" The career of the horseman was indisputably, on his own part, uncontrollable. The agony of his countenance, the convulsive struggle of his frame, gave evidence of superhuman exertion, but no sound, save a solitary shriek, escaped from his lacerated lips, which were bitten through and through in the intensity of terror. One instant, and the clattering of hoofs resounded sharply and shrilly above the roaring of the flames and the shrieking of the wind. Another, and clearing at a single plunge the gateway and the moat, the steed bounded far up the tottering staircases of the palace, and with its rider disappeared amid the whirlwind of chaotic fire. The fury of the tempest immediately died away, and a dead calm sullenly succeeded. A white flame still enveloped the building like a shroud, and streaming far away into the quiet atmosphere, shot forth a glare of preternatural light, while a cloud of smoke settled heavily over the battlements and the distinct colossal figure of a horse. So that. Oh yeah, your version's different.
We barely kept up because jump around to find out where we were.
Yeah, I apologize.
It's all right. We ended up at the same place, at Barney Castle.
Yeah, and then Frederick Baron Metzgenstein was the last of a long list of princes. His family name is no longer to be found among the Hungarian aristocracy. That's the last sentence.
So the reason there's confusion, if you're new here, we encounter this problem often, is that there are different versions of the same story that Poe wrote. Why are there different versions? Well, to confuse people, first of all, and to model what Poe was actually trying to say and do. This is something that Dennis Speed has talked about, especially when we're doing these early on, by the way. So if you can go to our first few classes, Dennis talks more about exactly why the versions are different. But I wanted to get to some notes that I had here about the story that I promised we would do here. This comes from Dennis Speed. Poe's Metzengerstein was the first of his published stories. It was published in Philadelphia in 1832 when he was 23. Jesus. It was one of 11 stories that he intended to publish as a book called Tales of the Folio Club. Poe was competing with two other British authors, both decidedly anti-American, Sir Edward Bulwer Lytton, and Benjamin Disraeli. Oh, who became a prime minister?
In Britain.
In Britain. Yeah, right. That's what the notes say here. And later, the British prime minister. The sources behind this is a quote here by author Alexander Hammond, tells us, the sources behind the 1833 Folio Club collection reveal Poe to have been an avid student of the literary scene he aspired to enter. One who pored over American and British magazines, closely followed the careers of rising young authors like N.P. Willis and Benjamin Disraeli, and kept abreast of the current bestsellers. The tales in the volume, literary exercises in the style of popular authors of the day, as T.O. Mabbitt describes them, represent a panorama of the most important modes in contemporary fiction. Poe may have well hoped that their variety would be received as a virtuoso performance in the art of fiction comparable to that of Horace and James Smith in poetry with Rejected Addresses, London 1812, a famous collection of verse parodies which, like Tales of the Folio Club, features a cast of contemporary authors and employs a literary competition as a framing device. by the way, on Benjamin Disraeli. I think, what was it? It wasn't the what story was it that we read that also referenced Disraeli? I think it was the one about where he's communicating with the guy who's dead. But like he's the it was a word for hypnosis, but I forget the yeah, you know what I'm yeah, mesmerization. No, mesmeric revelation.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Yeah, if you can go back and find our episode titled Mesmeric Revelation, you will also probably uh enjoy that as well. Now, let me continue here with the notes. Although the function of the stories in Poe's 1833 collection is too complex to allow them to be described as parodies, um, both this work and Rejected Addresses are satires that demand readers well versed in things literary, and Poe may possibly have been seen in the popularity of the Smith's book a reliable indication that an American audience existed for his own more ambitious experiment. Poe was actually taking aim at the Edinburgh Review, Blackwood's magazine. Now, that was the end of the quote. Now we're back to Dennis's notes. Poe was actually taking aim at the Edinburgh Review, Blackwood's magazine, originally the Edinburgh Monthly Magazine. And these magazines and authors were generally affiliated with the Tory wing of British politics, a grouping that were particularly hostiler to the American cultural effort, as they were devoted to reincorporating or at least subjugating the fledgling United States, which had only been found 20 years before Poe was born. To frame the 1833 collection, Poe evolved a comic microcosm. This is back to quoting. To frame the 1833 collection, Poe evolved a comic microcosm of his literary world in the form of a bizarre spectator club whose members are disguised caricatures of well-known British and American authors. There are two notable exceptions: Satan, incognito behind green spectacles, and a mysterious little man in a black coat who is probably Poe himself. At monthly intervals, perhaps recalling the publishing cycle of most literary magazines in this era, the club holds a contest at which the members read original tales, comment on one another's compositions in turn, and then vote to determine the best and worst among their efforts. The remarks following each tale were intended as a burlesque upon criticism. The Spectators Club was a fictitious organization created by writers Joseph Addison and Richard Steele. From 1711 to 1712, it was published 3 times per week. It was long essay form whose total word length per issue came to about 2,500 words. Several of the American founders are said to have read some of the issue. The non-existent members of the club would discuss contemporary matters. 11 stories are read out loud to the group, are then evaluated. This leads to fights among the several members and the eventual censorship of the very enterprise itself. Hammond continues. This is a quote again. Hammond continues. Although these sections of the frame are lost, presumably they involved misinterpretations of the stories and exaggerated the savage attacks, literary feuds, indulgence in personalities, and affectation of elitist authority that characterized the magazine criticism Poe followed most closely in this period. The club's organization, I believe, satirically institutionalizes the practice of destructive criticism, an elite circle of authors who act as critics of works by other members of the same in-group. The club keeps itself supplied with food, drink, and a meeting place by regularly using up one of its number, since the loser of 1 month's competition must host a banquet for the next, over which the winner, to compound the injury with insult, rules as president. The frame as a whole is organized as the story of the club's response to the narrator. An initiate who joins after too many losses forces out the Honorable Augustus Scratchaway. He rebels when his maiden effort is voted worst and publishes a record of his first and only meeting with the group to expose it as a diabolical association, plotting to abolish literature, subvert the press, and overturn the government of nouns and pronouns. And then here, yeah. So those are the notes that Dennis had for this story. We don't have much time. First of all, I want to thank Howard for donating also to the campaign while we were reading the story. That is very kind of you. Thank you. I will be calling you once we finish this live stream. So thank you for your donation as well. But yes, we have 5 minutes left, and I don't necessarily know if we should discuss the story. I don't know if you guys have any immediate thoughts, but well, the first thing, I mean,
So who's the horse?
who's the horse, right?
It's
The
transmigration of the soul.
the specific word he used was metempsychosis.
Yeah, of the soul into the animal.
Yeah.
So at first, I actually thought it was his mother.
I just got a comment saying that Epstein is the horse.
But the horse, riding on the horse is somebody he doesn't say who it is. It belonged to a Saracen ancestor, the family of his rival. So he's the ancestor of the other family. And
Just speak up a little bit, Suzanne.
he's the ancestor, Saracen ancestor, Arab, of the family of the other family, Beardeslin, the other family. What's his name?
Berlific,
Yes.
yeah, Berlifichstein.
So the tapestry, the person who the horse belonged to the Saracen ancestor of the other family, and that person is killed by a Metzengerstein.
Correct.
So that's the context of seeing this person killed, and then the horse is there, and then they so what is happening is he takes he fulfills the killing of, I mean, I guess the first quote is the thing that gives it away. In life it's the plague, and in what is the translation of the first quote?
Oh, the translation of the first quote is, hold on, I have it here. Living, I am your plague. Dying, I will be your death.
So I'm a little, that seems to be the case, but I don't know exactly what that means, except for an attack on the aristocracy, having these feuds between the count, which is a lower level, and the prince, which is the higher level. And they have these ongoing feuds and over centuries kill each other. And then the souls migrate into these animals, and somehow this all adds up to what occurs with the horse and the fire and the death of they say at the end that this is the end of the family. This is the last. He's the last. The Baron Metzengerstein is the last in the long list of princes. After this happens, there's no longer anything from the family.
One of our regular viewers, by the way, had two comments to say. One, in response to the Epstein is the horse. This is Samantha. She said, "Oh, that's good." But then secondly, she said, the house feuds reminded me of the Montagues and Capulets when the story first started. Which, by the way, Samantha had joined us a couple weeks ago when we did a reading, and I forgot to ask her again to join us. Samantha, I hope you don't feel blindsided. You were an excellent reader a couple weeks ago, so you can join us again next week. I apologize. I was just rushed. Everyone's in Europe also, too. So, but as you heard in the beginning, but thank you, Samantha, for your comment. But yeah, anybody else have any other comments?
Yeah, just that this Bowyer Lytton was a writer. He has some famous book that the Rosicrucians claimed him as their own. And I thought he was mentioned in like the Hitler book, wasn't he, as a writer of these occult things? Yeah. So anyway, he was also, I think it said he was a political foreign secretary or something. So he had, Bulwer began his political career as a follower of Jeremy Bentham, then elected as member of parliament. And then, so a lot of these writers, like that other guy you were talking about, what was the other guy's name?
Disraeli
started out as a writer and then went into politics.
Here, you guys remember by the way, Suzanne, the old man died first. Remember? Yeah. And I'm looking for the the exact here. Where does he say it here?
Then the wife dies of consumption.
Hold on, I have it here because it's in the back and forth. Hold on. I'm just looking for it here. Okay. Here, and then we'll do this in the dialogue too. To lighten the depression of his spirits, the bear. You guys have the story there. You know, hopefully the version isn't too different. Go to where it says to lighten the depression of his spirits. Okay. That is to. You guys got it? Oh, you guys don't have it as to lighten. Yeah, your version. It should start with, okay, what horse? Where did you get him? Go there.
Yeah. Whose horse is that?
Okay, that's right. That's right. Yeah, that's where you're. Okay, whose horse? Yeah.
Page 4.
Okay, so you do the. I'll be the narrator. You do, both of you be the. I'll be one of the. No, Suzanne, you be one of the equerries, and then you be the youth,
Okay.
Dick, and I'll be the narrator.
Okay.
And speak up too.
Whose horse is that? Where did you get him?
Demanded the youth in a querulous and husky tone of voice, as he became instantly aware that the mysterious steed in the tapestried chamber was the very counterpart of the furious animal before his eyes.
He is your own property, sire,
replied one of the equerries.
At least he is claimed by no other owner. We caught him just now, flying, all smoking and foaming with rage, from the burning stables of the castle Berliftesing. Supposing him to have belonged to the old count's stud of foreign horses, we let him back as an estray, but the grooms there disclaim any title to the creature, which is singular since he bears evident marks of a narrow escape from the flames. The letters WVB are moreover branded very distinctly upon his forehead.
Interrupted a second equerry.
We at first supposed them to be the initials of Wilhelm von Berliftesing.
Extremely singular.
Oh, hold on, wait. Because yours says, I suppose them, of course, to be the initials of Wilhelm von Berliffenstein, but then my version continues, but all at the castle are positive in denying any knowledge of the horse. There you go. Now you can go on, Dick.
Extremely singular,
said the young baron with a musing air and apparently unconscious of the meaning of his words.
He is, as you say, a remarkable horse, a prodigious horse. Although, as you very justly observe, of a suspicious and untractable character. Let him be mine, however. He had after a pause. Perhaps a rider like Frederick of Metzengerstein may tame even the devil from the stables of Berlitzfitzing.
You appear to be mistaken, my lord. The horse, as I think we mentioned, is not from the stables of the count. If such were the case, we know our duty better than to bring him in the presence of a noble of your name.
True,
observed the baron dryly, and at that instant a page of the bedchamber came from the chateau with a heightened color and precipitate step. He whispered into the master's ear an account of the miraculous and sudden disappearance. The problem might here be that you guys have different versions too. But anyway, he whispered into his master's ear an account of the miraculous and sudden disappearance of a small portion of the tapestry in an apartment which he designated, entering at the same time into particulars of a minute and circumstantial character, but from the low tone of voice in which these latter were communicated, nothing escaped to gratify the excited curiosity of the equerries. Okay, then we're going to read this last dialogue here, but let me just, the young Frederick during the conference seemed agitated by a variety of emotions. He soon, however, recovered his composure, and an expression of determined malignancy settled upon his countenance as he gave peremptory orders that a certain chamber should be immediately locked up and the key placed in his own possession. All right, so let's just read this last dialogue here. And then I think, yeah,
Have you heard of the unhappy death of the hunter Berliftizing?
said one of the vassals to the baron, as after the affair of the page, the huge and mysterious steed, which that nobleman had adopted as his own, plunged and curveted with redoubled and supernatural fury down the long avenue which extended from the chateau to the stables of Metzengerstein,
No.
said the baron, turning abruptly towards the speaker.
Did? Say you?
It is true, my lord, and is no unwelcome intelligence, I imagine, to a noble of your family.
A rapid smile of a peculiar and unintelligible meaning shot over the beautiful countenance of the listener.
How died he?
In his great exertions to rescue a favorite portion of his hunting stud, he has himself perished miserably in the flames.
Indeed.
Yes. Sorry. But I was just saying that, like, ejaculated the baron as if slowly and deliberately impressed with the truth of some exciting idea.
Indeed.
Shocking.
So the old man died first.
Yeah, for the old Berliftizing. He died because he was the guy who loved horses more than anything.
Right. And as this comment I got, so this is a case of metempsychosis. The old man's soul is in the horse, and it sits upon the throne of the soul of the 15-year-old from that time.
But he was but the horse came off the tapestry. Oh, because of the family. It was the Saracen of his family who was killed. Oh. Okay. And it all adds up to the superstition of the aristocracy.
Yeah.
Which ends up killing themselves and destroying their own line.
Well, they are, as this other comment I got, they are the same. They are both beasts.
Yeah, they're both beasts, right? And this is Poe attacking the aristocracy.
Like today.
Yeah, because they always destroy themselves, ultimately.
All right, look, it's 7:07. I have to end this now, but like I said, tomorrow at 2 p.m., you can tune into the LaRouche organization. We will be streaming the first panel of the German conference. I want to thank the two people that donated. One person donated 100, the other one did 200. I want to thank both of you for allowing me to read your comments publicly, for letting people know that, and for tuning in as well. Go to the LaRouche organization YouTube channel right now. There is a dialogue happening on the Texas floods. If you want to get the president of the LaRouche organization's take on what's actually happening there and what the solution is, and just to learn more about our organization.